There are three main prepositions: b, k, and l, and they have much in common. I've drawn this line here in each case to show that each one doesn't stand alone, but they are attached to the words that they modify. Now, the glosses, don't get too hung up on that, because prepositions in all languages are a little bit like Jell-O and have a bunch of different glosses. So if we take, for example, the word k, usually we'll go like or as our default. And in the case of l, we'll usually go with to or for as our gloss. In the case of b, there's a whole range. You can start with in, but you might also go with or on or against, or a number of other choices with b. Now, as I've said, these prepositions don't stand alone. They go directly on the words that they modify. So if we take the word sus, horse, and we wanted to add a preposition to it, let's say we wanted to say on a horse. Well, we put the b right on it, and there we have it, on a horse. However, what if we had, instead of a horse, what if we had the horse? Well, here we have a problem because we have two things that want to compete for this same place. We have a b and we have a ha. So what happens is they're both going to come to the front of this word and join it, but the weaker letter is going to lose out. So what will happen in this case, if we take the word, we'll take it in steps. So first we have the horse, but then once the b comes along to modify it by preposition, in that case, what's going to happen is that the hey is a very weak letter, and so it will be displaced. So here we have on the horse. So the b, the preposition, just pushes the hey right out of the way. Now you can see that it's still on the horse because the footprints of the article are left behind. But the article itself, the hey, has been squashed away by the preposition. Let's take another example. If we take the word for king, melech, we have a king. Now, if we wanted to say the king, no problem. We just add the hey, patak, and the dagesh in the main, the first root letter. What if we wanted to say like a king? Well, no problem. We just start with our word, king. Then we add the to make it definite. But now we're going to have to take the hey away because we're going to add the preposition ka, like the king. Now you can see the difference, because if it was like a king, well, that would be simple enough to see in contrast. There we have like a king, and here we have like the king. And what we can see is the footprint of the article is left behind to show us that this is a definite noun, like the king. Well, what happens if the first root letter is a guttural? Well, of course, when we make it definite, we have compensatory lengthening, ha'ish, the man. So if we take, say, the word Adam, and we wanted to say the human, we would add the hey, and we couldn't add a patak dagesh because the aleph won't take a dagesh, so we have compensatory lengthening. So we have ha-adam. Now, if we wanted to say to a human, well, then what we would do is we'd start with Adam, to the human, and then we would add our article. Now, the hey is going to get displaced by the prefix preposition la Adam. So we can see that this is to the human, and we can tell because of the footprint that the article has left behind in terms of a compensatorily lengthened comets underneath the prefix preposition. I'm going to go with one more sort of anomaly here. We'll take the name Judah. Judah. Now, if we wanted to add a prefix preposition, we have a little bit of a problem here because if we wanted to say in Judah, we couldn't do that straight up because we cannot begin a word with two shvas. And so what happens in this case is we will go ahead and add the letters. So I'll actually go ahead and do it for a moment, but it doesn't actually work in real life. We can't do this. So what happens, to take it in steps, is the first shva compensates and becomes a hirik. Now that's normally what happens, and that's fine. But in this case, because Judah began with a yod, now that creates a long vowel, a hirik yod, and so what happens is then the shva under the yod drops out because this hirik takes over the yod, and the yod becomes part of the vowel. So kind of there's a chain reaction that happens in this case. And so to say in Judah, what we would wind up having then is Bihudah, and that's in Judah. We'll talk about one more preposition, the word mean. Now, mean is a standalone preposition, and it means from. However, because the other prepositions attach themselves to words, in the case of mean, it can attach itself as well. It typically does not attach itself to a word that begins with a definite article. It usually stands alone, but it can attach itself to a word without a definite article. So, for example, if we took the word melech, the word for king. Now what happens is the mean will attach itself, but the noon will assimilate and become a mem. So the dagesh here is showing you that the mean has assimilated from a king, but the noon actually turned into a meme. Now this is exactly like what we have in English. So for example, if we take the word material and we wanted to negate it by adding the Latin prefix in, it assimilates so that we have the word immaterial. So the N turns into an M, assimilating to the first letter of the word. Or let's take the word religious. Now these days, there are people that are not religious. So let's say we wanted to add an N, an in, a Latin N, to negate the word religious. Well, the N is going to assimilate and become an R, so that we have the word irreligious. So that's exactly the same thing that we have in the case of Hebrew, where we have from a king, the noon assimilates into the meme, and we can see by the dagesh that that's what happened, exactly like English, where the N assimilates into an R or an M or whatever other word it is. That part's immaterial, so to speak. But what happens if we have a word like man, ish, and we wanted to say from a man? Not a problem. We take our meme and add it. However, we cannot put a dagesh into the aleph because it is a guttural letter and it can't be doubled, so it repels the dagesh. So what happens is we have compensatory lengthening where the hirik becomes a tsere. So what we can tell is this is from a man, and we can see that the tsere is showing that the noon was assimilated and caused compensatory lengthening of the vowel.